Up next, Authentically Detroit welcomes founder and CEO of Empowerment Plan, Veronika Scott, plus Cheryl P. Johnson, the CEO of COTS Detroit, to discuss their efforts to alleviate homelessness in the city of Detroit. But first, what we're reading from the Michigan Chronicle. Supreme Court gutting a Voting Rights Act strips black political power, experts say. Bernie Sanders drew hundreds in Detroit this weekend as progressives pick between Abdul El-Sayed and Mallory McMurrow. Listen up, everyone. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast belong to its host and do not represent the Eastside Community Network or its sponsoring organizations. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Spring classes have started at the Stoudemire Wellness Hub, from chair yoga and strength-based fitness to nutrition, cooking, and wellness-focused classes. There's something for every person and every starting point. At the Stoudemire, our hope is to offer movement, nourishment, and community to support you throughout the spring season. Learn more at ecn-detroit.org/classes or give us a call at 313-571-2800.
What's up, Detroit? Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit. We're broadcasting live from Detroit's east side of the Stoudemire inside the Eastside Community Network. I'm Sam Robinson.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Thank you so much for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people here in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Today, we're joined by the founder and chief executive officer of Empowerment Plan, Veronika Scott, plus Cheryl P. Johnson, the chief executive officer of COTS Detroit, who are here to talk about their 16-year partnership centering a shared mission of providing emergency help for people experiencing homelessness and providing pathways out of generational poverty. Cheryl, Veronika, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you.
How you guys doing?
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Excited to be here, especially with this one.
Awesome. First, we are going to run down some of this week's top headlines. If you guys want to chime in with any of your thoughts or commentary on some of these stories, go right ahead. But let's dive in. It was something that I heard former Vice President Kamala Harris say that she was not surprised to have seen happen. The Supreme Court last week officially sort of gutted that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the landmark law as a result of the civil rights movement in a 6-3 decision along party lines. The Supreme Court ruled that Louisiana's 2024 election maps were unconstitutional. They called it a racial gerrymander. President Trump on social media praised the decision. Democrats, black legacy institutions like the NAACP and others really slammed the court, slammed Republicans. Trump told reporters earlier this year that white people were treated very badly as a result of the civil rights movement. Donna, we are still feeling the effects of the civil rights movement.
Well, I mean, racism is not a flaw, it's a feature of the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. So when you understand that our government is founded on racial supremacy, on white supremacy, that everything that has happened since our founding has been built on white supremacy, then you don't get shocked that the minimal efforts to reverse things get, turned around. I think if you look at I remember learning about the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision and the disgusting, if you've ever read the whole decision, it's even worse than the line that a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. That's not even the worst part of it, because it said in that decision that a black person, whether they were enslaved or not, however they got here, was not fully human. And so that's the basis. That's the basis for eradicating or killing so many Native Americans, the genocide committed against Native American people, pushing them out of their land, taking their land, and then accusing them of being savages, right? As we take your stuff, we blame it on you. That's the reason why you had Chinese laborers come here and build railroads and then they get treated like they don't belong
That's
here.
right. Yep.
That's the reason why people come from Mexico and they build and they farm and then they get kicked out because, Operation Wetback happened in the 1950s. It's not recent history. So let's not get surprised and let's not blame Donald Trump without acknowledging the fact that he would not be president if a whole lot of people were not super comfortable with white supremacy, because he was very clear that white supremacy, and shockingly, not just white people are comfortable with white supremacy. Some of Black people, Hispanic people, Haitian people, African people, white supremacy is the kind of logic that poisons the way that people think and poisons our culture. And so, some of us used to talk about, Cheryl, I remember, we used to talk about how the idea of racism being blatant versus racism being hidden in the code. And sometimes when you don't see racism, it makes it harder to fight it.
That's
but
right.
when they come out and they tell you exactly what they think and exactly what they want, I think actually this is going to garner more activism in our community because we know that we have an enemy.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that happens, because the idea, what saddens me most is it's just a little bit too quiet right now. And I don't feel the outrage of what has happened over the last few days. Like, I'm not seeing it, feeling it, or hearing it. And so that's scary to me.
I'm not either. And I feel when I was in high school, we made a big deal out of Supreme Court decisions in like 2013, 14, 15. Even in college, like, this happening would have been all over our
That's
Instagram
right.
stories and Facebook Reels and everything.
But the Supreme Court has no more legitimacy, right? So when the Supreme Court does something, everybody's like, okay, we are numb. We're numb because numbness is a protective feature for our psyches. If we reacted every time that Trump did something to offend us, this is a man who has done nothing but just disrespect us, anti-DEI. You look at the ads that are coming out and everything that's happening. I don't want us to be so caught up every time they do something racist that we forget to strategize, that we forget to plan. We are hopefully, many of us, I believe, are behind the scenes actually trying to build and create things. You mentioned something, Cheryl. When you came in, you talked about, because I completed my book, but there's so many people completing their books.
Yes.
And what is that?
Yeah.
It is us taking back our voices.
Yep,
It is
that's
us
right.
really claiming it. Think about the Harlem Renaissance. I think every day when I hear about Black authors and Black filmmakers and people doing things on their own, that when you know your government does not love you, then you have to love yourself.
That's right.
And so I don't think our biggest fight has to be through protest. I think our biggest fight has to be through communal healing and building something separate and different and showing love to each other, because what they want us to do is be so upset all of the time. And I want to say this because it's important for me to say this. I went to the doctor last week because I was in almost chronic pain. And so I've been tested, and I don't know where I stand, for an autoimmune disorder, because how is it that you're always in pain? And so we're going through my symptoms, and I have been in daily constant stress. So when I say what I say, I'm speaking to people and say, we've got to take care of ourselves, because they will kill us having us be so upset all the time. Our bodies cannot take that kind of cortisone release all of the time, that we're depleting our healthy reserves.
That's right. That's right.
And so if I'm not seeing anger and I'm not seeing outrage, hopefully what I am seeing is people coming together and loving each other and finding ways to take care of ourselves.
So that's making me smile. Go ahead, Veronika.
Are you sure?
But
Okay.
that is making me smile, and I will come back with it.
I just think there's a lot what you're talking about. I think there's a level of burnout we all have collectively. I think it's a strategy of just constant bombardment of stuff that you can't, when it is all happening constantly, you can't keep reacting. Your body just can't keep reacting. And I think that's a lot of the silence. I think it's collective burnout from just what's happening in the world right now. And that is on purpose.
Yeah.
And I think I'm hopeful for the individual, because I believe that like true actual change doesn't come in when one person is coming in and doing the grand, big superhero things. I don't think that's how change happens. I believe it is at the individual level. Like, that's where real change, and we can't just wait for a hero. There isn't somebody sweeping in with a grand cape.
Well, I think it's collective, right?
Yeah,
I think
that's
there's
what I'm hoping.
collective
It's like
change.
the collective
I think,
change.
And I think change really happens if you go through history. Change really happens when women come together and say, "Let's stop this." No offense, brothers, but when women come together and say, let's stop this, because the way we lead is different.
Yeah.
We lead collectively. We lead by bringing people together. And again, not just so many people writing books, but so many women writing books.
Yeah.
So many women claiming our voices. The first thing you have to do is claim your voice. The first thing you have to do is figure out, I'm disconnecting from this establishment system that keeps telling my people that we're less. And, and I'm not trying to prove myself to them anymore. I now know I can't prove myself. And then the next step is coalitions and the formation of partnerships like you have quietly in the background, because keeping in mind that this Supreme Court decision is not the first time that the Voting Rights Act has been attacked. It's been under attack for over a decade. This is the final death knell. And so in that process, when I see people coming together and coming up with solutions, I love what you all do, and I can't wait to talk about it, because you didn't ask permission.
Yeah.
You didn't ask for somebody to tell you what to do. You came together and just did it because you know it's needs to be done. And I believe more of that's going to happen. I frequently talk about this because I was blessed to be part of a Summer Leadership Institute in 2002. And Professor Evelyn Higginbottom, and I always give her credit for this because we have to acknowledge people who think of things differently and change the way we think, pointed out that the post-Reconstruction era is always looked at as a time of tremendous loss for Black people. That's the way it was taught to me. That's the way it was passed down. But in post-Reconstruction, what did we have? We had the formation of the NAACP. We had the Black Greek organizations. We had Black hospitals. We had Black savings and loans organizations. We had Black all of these businesses, and it happened so quickly. That's when you saw what happened in Tulsa, where people were so angry they had to try to take it back because they saw our growth. I think it's important for us to understand that we have power to exist and to do things and to create things outside of what our government, which has been hateful from its formation, does to us. We have the power to love. We have the power to create, and the power to create a vision for what freedom looks like, so that when we get past this hateful moment, things will change.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, there was a narrative or a belief that progress was linear, and I think that has been undone in our, sort of lifetimes through the lens of the civil rights movement. Obviously, Republicans who opposed the heart of these bills in the 1960s are now sort of coming back and having real victories against what it was perhaps their ancestors or their dad or grandpa or grandma, uncle, aunties, whatever, were opposing at the time.
There's been more than one civil rights movement, though. Yeah. And the challenge is, most of us think civil rights movement happened in the 1960s.
Yeah. Right.
But the civil rights movement went all the way back to the founding of this nation. People were fighting for their rights, fighting for their freedom from the very beginning. And it does go in curves. You have up and down, back and forth. But the history, the arc of the universe may bend towards justice. And, I'm still an optimist. But it doesn't bend in a straight line, as you were pointing out, Sam. There's a lot of, fluctuations in that bend. We know that the administration right now is wildly unpopular with American people. Mm-hmm. A lot of American people really got used to living in a multicultural society and really thought, well, we're going to stop this, we're going to stop this. But again, my optimism makes me believe in the human spirit. And I believe that a whole lot of people, when they take away the rights of Black people to vote, are going to vote against this simply because it's repugnant to many people.
Yeah.
Some of those the provisions within the Voting Rights Act, talking about Section 2, the tension between Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits laws being out of being considered with race. Mm-hmm. And so that's always been a natural tension that exists. We felt it while I was reporting on Michigan's Independent Redistricting Commission in 2018 through like 22. That went on forever. You cannot use race to create districts. However, you must consider race to create districts, said the rules of the commission. And so there was a natural thing there. I talked to Anthony Eade. He's actually running in the House district, which is kind of like this Detroit House candidate wants to run in the district that he drew. Questionable. I think, that's like a Detroit News headline. I would expect Craig Monger to push out pretty soon here. But Anthony told me, as it relates to this court ruling last week, that it could affect. If you're a Republican, there's nothing stopping you from suing the state's maps at this point out of exactly the same thing that the state of Louisiana did. The state of Louisiana, I'm sure the state of Florida, Republican lawmakers are going to be actively looking to sue the redistricting commissions or whoever put together the maps of states that made those maps into law. And so, it's really interesting, and black voters, black majority political districts, which of course Detroit had several sort of taken away as a result of the most recent redistricting process.
Well, I want to talk about the most recent redistricting process because I think a lot of times it's widely misunderstood. There's gerrymandering in Michigan is longstanding, and the way that gerrymandering has worked or the districting has worked is that Republicans have been in control of drawing the maps. And so one way to weaken black political power is to put all the black people in one district. Mm-hmm. And then you only have one representative. When you reduce the diversity within districts, what you do is you reduce the ability of black people to weigh in multiple districts. And so a lot of people say the maps have been drawn and in ways that have actually given us representation, but minority representation, as opposed to giving us racial inclusion gives us better representation. And so I think the intent was to create districts that were not, looking like snakes with a specific intent. And so the redistricting commission, it was voted by Michigan voters, right? Voters, not politicians. And I'm on the board of this organization, so I got to speak up for it, right? Voters, not politicians is intending to have race-neutral policies that say, let's look at districts and let's look at bringing people together by affinity groups, but not letting, politicians draw these lines.
But Donna, how do you think the average Detroiter needs to know that information?
I think we need to re-educate Detroiters. I think that we need to acknowledge the fact that Detroit now is not the Detroit I grew up in.
Yes.
Okay? Most black people in Detroit don't live in the city of Detroit. They live in Metro Detroit.
That's right.
So this idea that you're going to have two congressional representatives representing a city that's shrinking is not realistic, okay? The reality is that you've seen some black politicians be successful in Michigan, even under these new lines. Donovan McKinney is an example of somebody who got voted to the state house. And he didn't get there because he was cool with the people. He got there because he was running on issues that mattered to the people, to his constituents. I want black politicians to understand that if you're going to run in a district that includes more than just Detroit, you can't just run on your endorsements by the right people, ignoring the right people, because people outside Detroit don't care about the Baptist Pastors Council.
That's right. Yeah.
They care about issues that you better be in front of. Most white people who are voting in Democratic races are going to be more progressive than black people in those Democratic races, because if they weren't progressive, they would be Republicans. That's my take on it. And so I want to train people to vote on issues around justice, which means we've got to bring environmental justice into the conversation. We've got to talk about poverty. We cannot keep on talking about black capitalism like that's going to attract the votes of many people. So I think it's a matter of re-educating. I think young Democrats, young voters, are actually more multicultural. We saw that happen at the convention, where you saw a multicultural group of people just standing for justice, and the establishment is mad. And I think that takes us to the next story.
It does. I want to say, talking about the redistrict or the Section 2, the issue that experts are screaming and yelling about is that they're doing away with the so-called racial gerrymander, but nothing about the partisan gerrymander. Southern states are going to want to get rid of their minority representation, which just so happens to be Democratic representation. Most black voters vote for Democrats.
Right. They are bringing back racial gerrymander, but to promote white power, as opposed to promoting equity. The idea now is, according to what Donald Trump said, is that we've got to make sure that we protect these persecuted white folks from the movement of black people.
They were treated really badly after the civil rights movement. Mumford High School played host to Bernie Sanders today. I don't know if the white people of Mumford were treated very badly and they stopped going there, or they just decided to stop going there on their own. But it's a completely black neighborhood today. It used to be all white people.
I grew up in that neighborhood. I grew up in the Bagley community. My sister went to Mumford. My grandmother taught at Mumford, so I have so many family ties to Mumford.
And what do you go ahead?
But I mean, if you grow up in Detroit, you know that block busting happened. Black people moved into neighborhoods, and all the white people left. There was one. My sister had a friend, and her little sister went to school with me. There's like a few white people left, and so when my grandmother taught there, white people were not pushed out; they left. And when they left, we were able to move into beautiful brick home neighborhoods. And Bagley Elementary was my school. I have beautiful memories of that. But there was absolutely no pushing out. There was absolutely block busting, redlining, and desire to move out of the city.
Yeah.
And black people were not
white
flight.
Right.
And black people could not move where they were going because we couldn't get FHA loans. And so there was a lot of intentionality around that. To rewrite history and say black people ran white people out is not, it's ridiculous. And mind you, there were some neighborhoods that remained all white. I went to Mercy High School and I taught, my mother had a friend who owned a Baskin Robbins on Grand River in North Rosedale, right outside of North Rosedale or Rosedale Park. And when I went there, one time my boyfriend at the time picked me up and we were chased by some white people. They were throwing things at our car, threatening to shoot us. I mean, I was laying on the floor of the car. There was so much racism.
This is on Grand River.
In North Rosedale. In North Rosedale, there was extreme violence by white people to black people when I was a kid. If you look at the history of Detroit Public Schools, and by the way, we are having an event on Wednesday where we're going to be talking about this book, The Containment, written by Michelle Adams, who's a law professor at U of M. I believe she's on loan to NYU right now. A brilliant book, and she talks about the Milliken versus, I always forget who was versus, the decision on busing in the city of Detroit. And she outlines the amount of racial violence that was going on in Detroit at that time in the 1970s. And it was not black people committing violence against white people. It was white people committing violence when black people were allowed in their schools.
Yeah, that's Milliken versus Bradley.
Thank you. Bradley, I always forget you. Sorry, Bradley. But it was Milliken versus Bradley. There was a whole, we had a recall. School board members who promoted busing were recalled. There was a recall campaign. And so when I was going to school in the 1960s, late 1960s, early 70s, there were a couple of school strikes where there was so much tension going on. And so my book, I tried to outline some of this. I can't get into all of it. The issues that we dealt with around racial persecution in the city of Detroit. But racism has gone one way in America.
And yeah, I bring that up that way because a part of what didn't make it all the way into my story, sort of mentioned, was the fact that a lot of Detroiters who, even those who are supporting Abdul al-Sayed, who are two-time Bernie Sanders voters in Democratic presidential primaries, they felt like, why is there a smattering handful of black faces in this gymnasium? Could you guys not have done better community outreach or just, knock on the neighbors' doors and say, hey, there's going to be a ton of cars parked here on a Sunday. This is what we're doing. Here's how to come. I did talk to James Aldridge. He brought his wife and daughter, Taylor Renee. His wife's name is Vanessa. You can see a photo of them on MichiganChronicle.com. Put them into my story. James told me that he feels like all politics is local. He feels like Abdul al-Sayed has done the most locally here in Detroit. Mentioned his time as Detroit Health Director and Wayne County Health Director as well. Taylor Renee and her mom, Vanessa, before the rally began, weren't convinced. They were still considering Mallory McMurrow, they told me. And they said after the rally, they were convinced, and they're going to be voting for Abdul al-Sayed in the Senate primary. That's August 4th. Haley Stevens, she is the United States representative from Birmingham. She represents sort of the more moderate Democratic forces. She is the only candidate in this race who is openly pro-Israel. That issue has been at really the central of the conversation. At the heart is whether progressives are going to stand with Mallory McMurrow. She is a state senator from Royal Oak. You may remember that she, because of the redistricting effort, actually does represent part of the city of Detroit in her state Senate district that was redrawn. She got rid of Marshall Bullock. Yeah. Mallory and Abdul, based on my reporting, have a on the ground right now advantage over Haley Stevens. I'm pretty confident in saying that because I have been going to these political events every weekend for a few months now, and we saw it at the Michigan Democratic Party convention. Obviously, that's sort of a skewed, doesn't represent the entire state voters. However, I mean, it was pretty interesting to see how riled up people were of all stripes, of all backgrounds, against her and against the largest and most influential, one of the most influential super PAC groups, APAC, which Haley has been a part of and has received millions of dollars from through her past campaigns. It does seem like El Said and Mallory McMurrow are, at least from the perspective of a Detroit reporter, the two favorites in this Democratic primary race.
And yet, most black leaders, elected leaders in Michigan who declared a candidate, are in support of Haley Stevens. And so you have Joe Tate, Brenda Lawrence, Helena Scott, Keith Williams, Tyrone Carter, Brenda Carter, Dave Bean, Kelly Garrett. I mean, I can go down the list, all in favor of a candidate who a lot of people who are really appalled by what's happening in Gaza are opposing because of their concerns around the affiliation with AIPAC. And so you have this Black Jewish coalition among traditional politicians that has remained intact, even despite everything that's happening for older politicians. And then younger people are coming out because Donovan McKinney actually was the person to introduce Abdul at the rally, who then introduced Bernie. Donovan McKinney went to high school with my children. His wife went to high school with my children. And so I had a conversation with him, and he is definitely grassroots, Detroit born and raised, representing our community. But he's running on issues that are very different than the issues that other Democrats that are more establishment are running. And so I think we're seeing that Black people don't vote as monoliths, number one, that there's a generational division, and I'm, kind of with the young folks, but
it's a stark divide.
It's a stark divide, and it shows up at the convention. I think Sylvia Santana is now suing and demanding a recount of the vote, saying that she should have been there. And so we're in an interesting political moment. I think political conflict or political activism is good, and it's okay for people to be on both sides of the issue. But that's where I see people coming out. We had more people showing up at the Michigan Democratic Convention who are young than any time in my lifetime, I think.
That's what Curtis Hertel told me. One thing that Joe Tate told me about his support for Haley Stevens, he talked about his past as a football player at Michigan State. He talked about being part of a team and how important it was to be a part of the Democratic team. He told me this was in Fixin's restaurant downtown Paradise Valley in September of last year. Haley did a event with Tyrone Carter and Michael Howard and Sri Tanadar and Joe and who else was in there? Amos O'Neill was in there. Madison Heights councilperson Quinn Wright. Detroit Fire Chief James Harris. I don't know if all these people are supporting Haley. Justin Onwenu was there too.
Yeah.
I don't know if all those people were supporting Haley, but there's this idea, and I think it has to do with people's refusal to push away power. Haley is in office right now. She is a congressperson already. Joe told me, we need people who are going to fight. we also need people that are going to be a part of the team and are going to look out for our best
Yeah,
interest.
that's what all gangs say, And so I think you have these coalitions, you have these machines that get built. And the machines, irrespective of whether they're Democratic or Republican, black, white, Hispanic, Arab, the machines become a thing unto themselves.
Yes.
Loyalty is more important
Yes.
than ideas. Tradition is more important than anything. And so when we favor loyalty and tradition over, ideas over policies, then we get stuck because the people who are beneficiaries of that loyalty and tradition are people within the machine.
Right.
And the people outside the machine suffer. Machine politics are always bad. And I think that what we're seeing is that there has been a machine that has driven the Democratic Party. But I want to point out there's chinks in that machine, right? Because if not, then you would have Jonathan Kinloch's brother as mayor of Detroit.
Correct.
Okay, but that's not what happened.
Well, you'd had Fred Durhall, right? If it was the true machine.
The true machine was the true machine. You had the 13th congressional district. You had the UAW, and you had many people supporting Solomon Kinloch. Fred Durhall was supported by the business community.
Yes.
I'm talking about the people who supported
The political machine.
That has been in office, and I think that machine also showed a lack of power.
Do you think
the congressional, the Michigan Democratic Caucus? That's the reason why you heard fat meat is still greasy, right?
It's greasy.
That's what.
Do you think it's loyalty is more important than ideas, or that they just agree with the ideas being presented by the candidates?
I think
in their
because
like Joe Tate and Haley Stevens, I don't know that they differ on anything.
But because the loyalty becomes you're loyal and you're going to accept this package of ideas. You're not going to break ranks, okay? So there is this traditional thinking around what justice looks like. And we have got to look differently. We talk about the middle class. I'm so glad, and I can't wait to get to this conversation because I'm talking to two women who have been trying to address poverty.
Yeah.
And the term poverty went out of vogue. You remember what I'm talking about, Cheryl?
Yep.
You remember when
Nobody
you couldn't
wants
say
to use it.
you couldn't use it. You had to talk about low income.
Yep.
It was
Yeah.
gauche to talk about poverty and mixed
Right.
company, right? And so you silence the needs of the poor. If you really look at what the Detroit Democratic Party is, you don't even want to talk about women's reproductive rights too much because you got the church coming in there saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't like that. You don't really have this coalition that's supporting LGBTQ rights, right?
Yes.
So we have a very conservative Detroit Democratic group. We're not dealing with poverty. We're not dealing with environmental justice. And you're saying that, and Keith Williams, as the chair of the Black Democratic Caucus, is defining what Black people want. And the beautiful thing about people is that people have a way of speaking for themselves, and young folks have been speaking out, and I'm proud of you, young people, because you have been demanding things that have not been demanded in a long time, and that is absolutely what justice should look like.
Yeah. And calling it what it is. That's that's everything that you said. If you sum it up, it's about calling it what it is and not being afraid to use those words.
Yeah, and
right?
words that are that we don't use, so we don't get an explicit tag on our thing. Mallory McMurrow and Abdul both like to use curse words.
So do I.
They were shouting curse words at Haley Stevens on Friday at the May Day at Michigan Central. There is a large and Abdul will not condone that behavior. I talked to a number of people at Mallory McMurrow events that told me that they weren't decided either. Now, these are people that are showing up to Mallory's events at Starters in Southfield or at the Motor City Java House near the Redford Theater. One of them was Noah Faris. He came with his mom, Katya Monfortin. Neither of them left the Mallory McMurrow event certain that they were going to vote for Mallory. Noah had asked her about ICE, and Mallory told him, Mallory told this high school senior from Livonia Churchill High School that while abolish ICE might sound good, Democrats don't hold power to do that. Noah and another person I talked to, his name was John Batherspoon, 39-year-old guy with a Western Michigan hat on. I said, hey, go Broncos. And he told me that Democrats, he's looking for the Democrat that he believes can win. A lot has been talked about Abdul Al-Sayed's chances against Mike Rogers. He says Democrats must win, and they must go all the way when they do. He says, I'm looking for who's going to be able to get in there and shake it up the most. It's really interesting. I think Mallory and Abdul, they say a lot of the same things. They differ on certain issues. There is a report from Ryan Grimm. He's the editor of Drop Site News. He obtained audio of a Mallory McMurrow staffer saying that she had drafted a position paper and sent it seeking support to AIPAC. Mallory told me when I asked her at her event that no, I never sought the support of AIPAC. She said that she has met with individuals because there's a large number of people that represent AIPAC or are AIPAC adjacent or support the organization or who have worked at the organization. Her husband, I believe when he was in college, Ray Wirt is his name, he interned for AIPAC, she said on stage at the Council of Baptist Pastors debate a couple weekends ago. That was the first time that all the candidates had been on stage together. This past weekend, they also were doing a labor event together. And it is really interesting when you get to see all three of these folks who, you know, they'll ask, and they were asking about Israel and Gaza at the Council of Baptist Pastors event. Haley won't even acknowledge the topic at all. She'll go into, when asked about that issue.
It's kind of like what happened. It happened. Well, that's what happened in the presidential contest last year, right?
Right, with Kamala Harris.
With Kamala.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's going to talk about Palestinian people as people, right?
And so she'll go into her we should have campaign finance reform. And I think she'll go, I think everybody on stage can agree that we need campaign finance reform. She will not engage in the actual question because she does not agree with what polling has shown, that a majority of Democratic voters are now, this has not always been, historically has been the opposite, but are now more sympathetic to Palestinians than they are to the government of Israel.
I mean, you know, why are we... Either things are right and humane or they aren't, right? And it doesn't matter who the government is. I mean, governments are inhumane by function, okay? Governments are just bad, okay? Governments are not power-sharing entities. So as far as I'm concerned, the people always have to have the ability to fight the government. And actually, that's built into the U.S. Constitution other than slavery and all the other bad things. But when I think about ICE, I think that this idea to try to justify people walking around masked, not following the laws, and just going into places and deporting people and harassing people, all I can think about is slave catchers. And then when you can think about slave catchers and you ask yourself, is slavery a good thing? What were slave catchers there to do? They were there to dispossess people of their humanity and their right to themselves. And so I'm not interested in having conversations to debate the practicality of getting rid of ICE. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in having conversations with people who are willing to talk about what justice looks like. And we know that once you become a politician, you may have to negotiate on some things. But if you're not even going into the job with an understanding that right is right and wrong is wrong, and I care about human beings, not because they're black, not because they're Hispanic, not because they're Jewish, not because they're Palestinian, but because they are God's children. And if I have a faith belief, I have to have a faith belief in human rights. Yeah. And that's what gets me about these conversations. And that's why I'm excited, because I see coalitions building. I see people really coming together around justice in ways that we have not before. And so I get where Haley Stevens is coming from. She is an old school politician who thinks, I'm just going to get away with not talking about it. But we saw what happened last presidential election. We see what's happening in a lot of congressional districts. People want change. It happened in New York. It happened in Detroit. It happened at the convention. And I think it's going to keep on happening. So I am going to not pay so much attention to the Supreme Court that I forget to pay attention to what's happening on the ground, because that's where change is going to happen. And it's going to happen because young people make it happen, because young people have always been at the forefront of change.
Amen to that. Right.
Let's talk more about what is going on the ground after we come back. Keep it locked. This is Authentically Detroit. Applications have opened for the Eastside Community Network Summer Discovery Program. Designed for students entering 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in the fall of 26, this summer experience is a full-day in-person program that combines structured academic learning, hands-on enrichment experiences, and creativity to guide youth in developing life skills related to political and civic engagement, climate change, and environmental justice using art-based expression as a tool for learning and empowerment. The program runs from June 29th to July 31st from 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Applications close on April 30th. For more details on how to apply, visit ecn-detroit.org/youth. Welcome back, everyone. The Coalition on Temporary Shelters, known as COTS, dedicated to the needs of homeless men, women, and children, grew out of a meeting in 1981 between a group of church leaders and human service providers in downtown Detroit. Officially formed in 1982, they have a mission to address Detroit's homelessness crisis by providing shelter and essential services that help participants achieve self-sufficiency. On March 17, Empowerment Plan, a Detroit-based workforce development organization that produces sleeping bag coats for people experiencing homelessness, distributed its milestone 100,000th coat to COTS Detroit, its longest-running partner. Started by Veronika Scott in 2015, the Empowerment Plan creates significant economic impact by serving as a stepping stone out of poverty into a state of stability. The core of their work stems from an intensive 2-year employment meal focused on providing job readiness training and support services to their workforce. Honestly, what's going on is I need new glasses, and I'm not reading words correctly.
Yeah, I had to get new glasses last year. So crazy. All my eyes are different, so they do change. Welcome to Authentically Detroit. I'm so excited to talk to people. I get excited about a lot of conversations, but when you have people who are just coming up with new solutions and thinking, how can we do this differently? And both of you have. And then you come together. It just gives me, once again, joy to know that you're out there and that you're thinking about that. Veronika, what this coat, sleeping bag thing, talk about it. That's so interesting.
Thank you for having me, and excited to talk about it, but also excited to be here with Cheryl because that was my first meeting.
And by the way, Cheryl is Cheryl.
Sorry.
No.
I apologize.
It's all good.
Oh, I know.
It's all good.
I know. and I love both names, right?
Right.
But Cheryl, yes.
Which do you prefer?
No.
Okay.
I just want the audience to know we are the one in the center.
Good. So one of the first meetings I ever had. And so Empowerment Plan began as a class project of mine at College for Creative Studies. But it really comes from a deeply personal place. Like I grew up in Detroit. I bounced around constantly. My parents struggled with homelessness, poverty, addiction. That's actually how they met, was through NA and AA. So that was my entire upbringing, and just spending the entire day with my mom in the car, driving from one place to go, because she was also diabetic and bipolar. And so you go from one place and you meet with a case manager and you sit in the waiting room and you talk to somebody and they're like, okay, I can help you with this, but you're going to have to go over there to talk to somebody else that will help you with that. And you just spend most of your time just getting ping-ponged around by people across multiple cities to address some of these things. And so Empowerment Plan started off initially around designing the coat for individuals that couldn't get a shelter bed if there wasn't enough at the time, and now we're seeing it again. But when it began was in 2010 as a class project, and there just wasn't enough beds. And so for me, creating an opportunity is like, okay, how can we help somebody from frostbite or hypothermia or losing a limb or something even worse? And how do we help them in that moment so that hopefully they can get into that shelter bed next? They can be next. And then Empowerment Plan grew into something much more, which I can get into as we talk more. But it has grown into more of that holistic workforce development. So hopefully people may not need the coat. So hopefully we can continue to hire individuals experiencing homelessness so that they may not need the product, and generations after them won't need it as well.
But having worked with, we started to support unhoused people in our community. And some of them are just going to need it, right? Mm-hmm. Some people are just not going to be people who can function in society because of mental health reasons. And they deserve to be warm too. Yeah. They deserve humanity too. And so,
absolutely,
there's this idea that we're going to eliminate poverty, and we won't, not in this society. And so poverty should not mean that you're suffering or you're dying or you're homeless. Ideally, we can create a society where being poor means that you just have less of some things, but you have your basic needs met. So when you created that sleeping bag coat, you created something that allowed people who maybe would not be 100% what we consider functional to be safe and warm. That's beautiful.
And what's wild, and you're talking about politics, and some of the responses to our work is pretty dark. It's surprising. Like, there's a lot of amazing support out there, but I can tell you when I began, the story went viral and I got hate mail.
Tell me about that.
And
what was the hate mail? What were they saying?
a lot of people thought, well, you're making it too easy for somebody. You're encouraging them to be on the street. You're encouraging them to sleep out. And it's a similar reaction. We work with a lot of harm reduction teams and street outreach and street medicine. And, I can talk about those teams endlessly. We work with them across the country, and I'm just such big fans. But that same idea is like, that person isn't worth it. And so that is the idea. And we've been told bluntly by certain people that it's like, oh, well, then just let them. Let them die. Let them not.
People who tell you that, do any of these people consider themselves Christian?
I don't know. Not sure.
Why, Donna? Why?
No, because it's always interesting to me. It's always interesting to me that people who say they're Christian have never read the New Testament or don't believe in anything in red. It's like, okay, because none of that is reflected in
loving humanity.
Of loving humanity.
Right.
You imagine Jesus saying, you know what, you deserve to starve. You know what?
You deserve to freeze.
Stone her.
And leaving you there.
Yes.
Leave you there.
You just
can't
deserve
imagine that.
the worst. We're making it too comfortable for people. I'm like, have you ever, can you imagine could you actually think about what you're saying?
I mean, there's hate in people's heart.
Oh, absolutely. And especially when I just remember being the most shocked about that. I know that from how people treated me and my siblings growing up in homelessness and poverty, and how you were just treated as worthless by default, that you were going to have the same life no matter what. No matter what you did, I have family members that looked at us and were just like, okay, your parents are both unemployed. They both struggle with addiction. You're not going to finish high school. You're not going to go to college. That was the default idea of that we were going to have the same life.
But look at you.
And it's very fun to prove people wrong. It's really fun. And my siblings and I, and that's part of what has brought us together. But it's also...
Your siblings are doing well?
Yes. I'm very proud of them. I love them so much, and it's like inheriting teenagers. A couple have lived with me in COVID, so it's fun times. But I think for me, that idea of this, I know that everybody's worth it. You think about my parents going through it, and it can happen to anyone at any time, as you know from the work that you're doing. And right now, people are incredibly, incredibly vulnerable. Everybody is, not just people in poverty. Everybody is incredibly vulnerable.
You can work 3 jobs and still struggle to pay rent.
We did a pit count recently in an outreach, and I gave coats to the guy that was sleeping outside of a strip mall in his car, who works multiple jobs.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. Your parents, how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 siblings.
2 siblings. And so your parents raised all 3 of you?
Yeah, and I was really brought up by my grandparents. I owe them everything. I love them dearly.
Amazing. All right. So Cheryl, you have been at this for a minute. And I know why they call you
a minute.
Cheryl. It's because you're a hero, right? To many people.
Ooh, I love that. Yes.
And so that's got to be a shero, which is even better than just a hero, right? He's a shero. And we need more of you. We masculinize that kind of salvation, but we know who you are. Can you talk about what you're seeing now and how you actually got connected with this project?
Yeah. So let me separate a couple of things with what's happening now. We're not even seeing what's going to happen within the next year. And I don't know if you've heard about the changes with supportive housing. That is substantial. That literally means hundreds of thousands of people who are currently housed, by the way, and housed well, will be unhoused. And we've
explain that policy.
So today, our COC, which is the body where the funding from HUD comes through, basically there's what we call a 30-70 split. The majority of those dollars go over to support permanent supportive housing. Mm-hmm. The other 30% will support transitional housing and some other supportive services. What's happening with the government is there's a total switch where funding will now all go over to the pot of transitional housing, and only 30% will go to permanent supportive housing. And we all know that permanent supportive housing is one of the best tools to tackle poverty. Like, we know this.
Can you talk about what permanent supportive housing is?
So it is housing that is linked with supportive services. And so people who are struggling with mental illness and other types of challenges and meet the income guidelines can apply for this housing through various programs. COTS has a portfolio of about 200 of those units, and there are other organizations. But across the country, this has been one of the best tools to address poverty. So you'll rarely hear me talk about homelessness, because that's, to me, is a symptom of poverty.
Right.
Let's address poverty and use that word. But this has been a way to help get people out. I also am aware that there is this total disconnect with government and the reality in folks' homes. And thinking that the idea that if you give them a house, and then this is the thought, that in fact they should resolve their poverty within a year or two and should be fine. We also know that for most people that are in that situation, when we're encouraging them through workforce development, get a job, they get a job, and then time they make $1 more, say they're making $15 and they make $15.50, that all of the benefits, which we call the cliff effect, those get torn away. And in fact, now the person is at a net deficit.
Right.
It's a net deficit,
Exactly.
right? And so this idea that let's just move them out of permanent supportive housing, because now they will have to go into another place of housing. So the question is, and I did ask Dr. Robert Morbutt, who was in town, he works for the government, and I said, what's the solution for that? And his response was, we haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
Right? And so people will be unhoused.
And they're not trying. Let's
Not at all.
acknowledge the fact that
Not at all.
the city of Detroit's housing policy, until Mary Sheffield was elected mayor, has been pretty bad. We've been building homes that are too expensive, that don't accommodate families, that the unit sizes are too small. And then inclusionary housing sounds great, because it always sounds great to be inclusive.
Yeah.
But when you're including a so-called affordable studio apartment in
Thank
an
you.
upscale building,
Thank you.
then you are not.
I am so glad someone is calling that out, because it's outrageous.
It is.
And the fact that we've redefined homelessness. Mm-hmm. Like, so before, you could be if you're on somebody's couch, you're homeless,
Yes.
right? And you're vulnerable. At any moment, they could say, get out, you're out on the street.
Yeah.
So we took that definition away. As long as you are somewhere, sleeping somewhere.
Who took that
Doesn't
definition away?
Our city did that. We
every city's
redefined.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
when
redefined.
was that done?
Oh, that's been some years now.
Yeah.
That's been some years.
Was
now.
it before Duggan?
No, during that time.
Of course.
Yeah. during that
Because,
time. Yeah.
and I think people need to know this. And I'm not trying to, I think people need to know what the housing policy was while the candidate for governor was mayor.
Yeah.
So they can understand what the policy might be if under this current MAGA administration, he were to become governor. Because I would like to know
That's right.
where there is sunlight between his beliefs and the beliefs that are in D.C. It felt like we were radically changing how Detroit was addressing social needs during his administration. And this is just an example.
Yeah, this is an example. And the fact that when those two children passed away in that car.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? Like, when there was this outcry You remember?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I would never receive so many calls in my life, like, what should we be doing? Da-da. And the next thing, and I said, so here's the thing that I want you to pay attention to. Within a month, I guarantee you, we won't be talking about this. And that happened. There was a 7-point plan from the city to address, and now we're looking at that because that plan. But one thing I will say that our new mayor is doing, I want you to pay attention who she's put in chief seats.
Yes.
Because when you bring a Luke Schaefer on,
Oh my goodness.
now you're going to address poverty.
I mean, I'm fangirling over the
I'm
whole thing.
so excited.
It's you know what makes me excited? Little things like the teens when they were having those things and all this anti-teen, and then she and her administration organized activities to show teens in a positive light. Because so much of what we have to do is narrative shifts.
Yep.
And, when you have certain politicians or certain people in elected office, what they do is they make suffering invisible. And as long as I can make suffering invisible and I can tell these great stories during my State of the
We
Cities.
don't have any homeless encampment tents. That was one of the things that he would like to talk about a lot.
We don't
However,
have
when I
encampments.
walk down
But
Woodward,
we removed them.
right,
We removed them.
they're all sprawled out across downtown now.
We
Yes.
do sweeps. We have people in abandoned buildings, and it's unsafe. There are people that are doubled up. Like, you can't say that does not count. And I think it's a game of cups. You're just hiding data and hiding numbers that dramatically impact
right.
all of these organizations and how we can do our work. Oh, you cut homelessness and these numbers, these critical numbers in half.
And
But
can
how?
we not
What?
forget about the number of youth in our
Oh.
school system?
Yeah.
Right? That we don't even consider.
Yeah.
Until issues come up. And Donna and Sam, you could pick up the phone and call any official and ask them in school, in our system, what's happening around the homeless population. And they will give you countless stories of how many homeless kids are attending our schools.
But we have
It's
to
a huge
decide to
population.
care.
Yeah.
We have to decide to care, and that we're not going to want to seem great. We're going to have to work, because being great is hard work. And being great means that you're willing to acknowledge those things about you that need to change, and you're willing to put money and energy behind it. When what you're trying to do is change the city from what it has been to something new, and you've decided it's no longer going to be a city of poor people, then you will have policies that inadvertently push them out of the city. And then you claim victory because you have fewer poor people. But what's happening is we're shifting them into invisible spaces, and it's happening all over the United States. And the work that we do has got to be making the invisible visible. We've got to acknowledge the needs. And so I think it's important that people understand everything you said, Cheryl. I think it's important that people understand this policy, what the 70-30 split is, what the reversal of that is. And I have a couple questions about that still. So this is for new housing development, or is this for existing housing?
This is for existing permanent supportive housing. We call it PSH.
Yes.
That's what
so
it exists.
with PSH, that means that you will have fewer, because I remember we were trying to do a LIHTC project, and we reached out to you last year. Remember that? And we were told that it was going to be really hard to get the PSH support, and nobody was willing to work with us because nobody knew where they were going to get that money from. Explain the change.
So the funding, the part where if you go in for a LIHTC deal, right, and you make it through one of the rounds and you are awarded those tax credits, right, you get the deal. But and people look at it as a very simple. It's layered financially. So it's not like, I get $10 million, and we know that the whole project is going to cost $19 million. That was our last project with Peterborough Arms. So now you're layering that, and say you get that done, but now you have to look at where's the money for the support. And support isn't a one-time hit. That support has to go on for the life of that project. And that's what makes it work. It's one thing to take people who are struggling from trauma and give them a house. So this is why we made the shift to families only. I was listening to stories of folk that I remember who came to COTS and they were kids. And now they're saying at this point, they're an adult with their own kids and they're back in the shelter, right? Now, I remember we got them into housing. The fact is they didn't have the supports to help them transition and move and become thriving people in community.
That's your bridges to self-sufficiency.
And that's our passport to self-sufficiency.
Passport.
That's hard work. It is not a one-time hit. And certainly an empowerment plan, even though you give a person employment, that there are all kind of other issues that come to play, and it's simply not childcare. Childcare is another issue, or this. There is this mindset. We all know that if you live in poverty for a very long time, it literally changes the way you are able to think. Right. That's your capacity. Right. And so what may seem a simple decision like, Sam, why don't you do? And Sam can't.
Right.
He literally, it's impossible for him to do that. And so this is unlearning, and it takes time to help people to work through that.
And that could even be for a night.
Yes.
You can have that impact from a trauma of just being displaced for a night. That does not have to happen over years.
I had that happen to me when I was in college. I didn't have a place to go for like a long ass time. It was like May 1 to like August 18. I was just sleeping on people's couches. And then I was working for the on-campus Methodist church at the time, and the director hated me for this, but I was just like, I'm just going to sleep in here and use your shower. And she was like, whatever. And like 2-3 weeks went by. She's like, okay, Sam, like, are you moving into your next apartment? And I had to be like, no. Didn't really, it was so weird because I had graduated Western and my on-campus student housing had ended.
Yep.
And there was no like affordable month-to-month apartment in Kalamazoo at the time. And so I literally was just like sleeping on my friends' couches and doing MLive as an intern. Before we take our last break, I want to ask you guys 2 questions, completely separate, but I guess from my perspective as a renter in Cass Corridor for 6 years. Do you know George Roberts?
Yes.
George is the reason why I don't live in Cass Corridor anymore. You remember this at Bobo, our conversation.
To you about this,
yes, I did. Yeah, so George took this portfolio that was owned by a mechanic named Joel Landy, and he tore up Joel's railroad tracks, and he painted over his partner's mural in the building, and he removed all of the regular working class people that used to live in Cass Corridor and replaced them with white men in their mid to late 20s with You Mish Medicine t-shirts being moved in by their parents in their mid to late 20s.
I was there. I was right across the street.
Yeah, so you saw all of it
right there.
happening. Kong Win of Fo Lucky no longer has a parking lot. Yeah. But George will say, Sam, I'm doing great, and we're going to get affordable housing, and we're going to build this 5-story mixed use. You just seen the latest J.C. Riddle article about that, which, I ask George, where you get this money from? And he's like, man, if you got an idea, money will come. I say, it's that easy, huh? He says, well, it's not that easy. George is a part of a group, not a group, but he is emblematic of this current generation of Detroit development, where people from West Bloomfield and Birmingham and elsewhere are getting money from New York and Israel and elsewhere to be local developers, right? Yeah. George views himself as a local developer in Cass Corridor somehow, upcharging, my $950 apartment that I rented for 3.5 years is now $2,600.
Sure. Probably about that big.
And this is
it's in Addison, then I live in the James Scott.
Yeah. This is what internal colonization looks like.
Exactly.
Where people who are not from here come in and extract resources from us. Because it's all about wealth extraction. Yeah. So many of our policies are about wealth extraction. We don't have time to have that conversation. But I do want to go back to the conversation about trauma. Because people don't understand how trauma works. Yeah. Trauma is not just something that happens to you. It reshapes who you are.
Absolutely.
And when you have intergenerational poverty, then you have intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
So, yes, it can happen in one day. But when it happens across generations, then it shapes you in ways that are
Yes.
even harder and more resistant to that kind of
Yes.
change. So I really thank you for the work that you do, first of all, and giving people jobs, right? So that the work that the things we're purchasing from you, actually employ people
Right.
who've gone through that is that extra step. This past winter, we had 26 days of extreme cold weather, and we opened our doors, and we were trying to figure out how to accommodate the people when they left, because we are not an approved shelter. So we were open on until 8 p.m. 4 days a
Yeah.
week, and we were open on Saturdays and Sundays. But I have a question: how do we purchase the COTS sleeping bags? Do you make those available to organizations like mine to help people?
Oh, yeah, we absolutely do. So there's ways you can go on our website, empowermentplan.org, purchase a coat or request a coat. We work with a lot of organizations because of this last year and because of the environment that we're in politically, whose budgets have been slashed, but the need has only doubled. A lot of organizations, you see it across the country, a lot of rural communities that is new for them. People that are sleeping in their cars, doubled up with friends or family, sleeping on couches, or rough sleeping in the woods in cities where there are no shelters, where they're an hour away from a hospital. So
Kalamazoo is one of those cities.
yeah, that go on a request list, because we've over the last, since COVID, we have consistently had 6,000 to 8,000 units requested of coats. 6,000 to 8,000 people.
How many can you produce 1 year?
We're doing about 13,000 coats this year alone.
Oh my gosh.
And so we do distribution across the US and 20 other countries.
You are
But-
amazing.
My
thank
question
you.
was about CCS. I mean, our friends that want to be design, fashion people, and
Yeah.
everything. Perhaps they should go into what you're doing and design
Well,
something
keep
that's
in
actually
mind,
useful
there's
for the world.
I will say this: what's very unique about Veronika is that you tapped, and then this is the truth. You tapped into a heart thing, right? Because now. Those coats, by the way, I don't know if you've seen them.
They
very
look cool.
Nice
Yeah,
coats.
they
Very
look
nice.
good.
We're very proud of them.
I would wear the
They're
coat.
very nice.
I would wear
Very
it too.
nice
Like, they
coats.
look cool.
Very nice coats. And so, but it wasn't the idea that I'm going to do something for me.
Yes.
This was you go back to the term, what I love to say about humanity. You saw humanity, right? And that you could do something for humanity.
Well,
And
and I
that's what
think even
happened.
smaller, like on a smaller scale, I saw it as like, this is something I can do for my family. This is somebody I can do for the person that lives literally, because I also lived in Cass Quarter and I was going to NSO and it was down the street from where I lived. And I think a lot of people don't
Where did you
start.
live?
Oh, name of the Barlum, the Verona.
Yeah.
They all
Yeah,
had
I know.
names.
See, I know.
Like,
I know. I live there too. I live in Charlotte, Peterborough.
they all had names. They sounded
One of those
real
buildings
fancy.
got there was a
that one
fire.
did.
The Barlum, I think there was a
Yes.
fire in there in like 2023. And the people that were in there got displaced.
It was
and now Illich
Yes.
is trying
Yep.
to redo them as part of the ODM.
Can
That
I
whole area.
bring up one more thing
Go ahead.
while I'm
I was
thinking
like-
about this whole thing, and this has been on my mind.
That
This
whole
has
area.
nothing to do with homelessness per se, but this idea. I would love at some point to have a conversation about the fact that we have all these wonderful stadiums downtown. People are coming downtown, but now you can't afford to park. So I just want to put that as, and this is a typical, so for our community where we still have substantial poverty, for a family to want to come to a game, just a game, that you would have to think about the cost of a ticket. Think of the cost of, now our gas is $5, right? And think on top of that about how the upcharge will go from $15 to $90 to park. And now
Well, you just park on the street. You park on the street
And
on
you know
Second
what? And
Charlotte. You can park on the street.
But
No, you
that's
can't?
out.
Why? Why not?
It's not enough of that.
Oh, there
is.
So it's
There's
just not.
tons.
No, there's not enough.
It's not
Oh, I
enough.
lived there for 6 years. There's so
I-
much
I
parking.
lived down there. It's not
I live there.
enough.
I live there.
But
There's
the
so
thing
much
is
parking.
Sam,
no,
unless you
no.
are willing to walk a mile,
Yes.
yes, you can park. Yes, you
This
can.
is,
yes.
this is a generational divide
Yeah, this is-
happening
No,
right now.
it's not a generational
No.
divide.
It's not a
though.
mile.
It's
It's outrageous.
But Sam,
No.
Sam,
But let me just say
why are
this:
these
you are
parking lots
pushing,
filling up?
you're pushing people out.
because it's the
people
culture.
cannot.
We're in Michigan.
No.
People want to park in
I
parking
think
lots.
Detroiters need to talk
I
about
disagree
that.
with
think
this.
I
they're doing it on
I
purpose.
feel like you're minimizing the issue, and I just want to say this: there are people who can figure out how to park on the street.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the volume of cars, there are not 40,000 parking spaces
No,
on the
it's not.
street.
No,
And so
that
you
is
have
true.
to park somewhere. And the reality is that the people who own these parking lots got those parking lots because the Illiches own a lot of
Yes.
those lots, and they were supposed to put buildings
Other things on them.
And
That's
instead,
my whole
what they are
point.
doing is
Yes.
they're using them to
Yes.
make money at usurious rates,
Yes.
and our tax dollars pay for
And
them to
I
do
think
that.
Detroiters should be outraged.
You know who-
I just think we should.
You know who
I'm outraged.
owned one of the parking lots at one point? He sold it to Park Right, George.
Oh, yeah,
Roberts.
next door. Yeah, right next door.
Put a cap in that. Yeah, the parking lot situation is terrible. And
I just
there
think
used to be
it's
free parking there
something
because
that should be
Bo Lucky
addressed.
parking lot used to be public, wasn't
And
it?
I just,
yeah.
I just
and so
want-
yeah.
And speaking with somebody,
I don't completely
as
disagree,
speaking as somebody with, I mean, you can disagree all you want, but speaking as somebody with 2 arthritic knees,
Sure.
having to walk any distance is hard. I went to a Pistons game not too long ago. And the amount of walking we had to do, and there was no street parking where we were. The amount of walking we had to do to get to a lot was ridiculous, and it's hard on me because it's cold outside. And these people are making all of this, so we were not going to pay $60, so we paid $40, and we parked a few blocks away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then so we need to look at all of
I'm
this.
just saying
as
the average
justice.
Detroiter cannot afford to participate there.
Yes.
That's all
No,
I'm
yeah,
saying.
I
That's
know.
my point.
And yet, if you're a Detroiter, you're paying income taxes if you're working here. If you're a Detroiter, you're paying, property taxes if
Yes.
you own property here. And so when you look at the cost of being a Detroiter, because it's expensive to be a
Yes.
Detroiter,
It is.
we're
Make
losing.
business sense of it. Someone told me that. Make business
You
sense
can't.
of
You
it.
know what
Yep.
you can't make business sense out of? We lost more population. We couldn't grow our population because poor people had to leave, even as we were bringing temporary people in from the suburbs. Poor people had to leave. We lost populations. Our neighborhoods continue to leak population, even as we're building up downtown. And then you have census, and everybody remember all that census push. Fill out these census, and if you don't fill out the census forms, the city's going to lose money. And we had such a low participation rate, in part because some people said, "Who cares? It's not coming to me anyway."
Yeah.
And also, if losing that census money is a problem, if losing population is a problem in terms of your city being able to attract people, then you should be able to. You should work harder to attract the least of us. But there's a reason we don't, and we can talk about that in another conversation. And that is because we are all trying to get our bond rating up. And when people look at Standard & Poor's and Moody's look at bonds in Detroit, and they decide if Detroit is credit worthy, one of the things they want to see is a reduction in poor people, reduction in poverty.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the easiest way to reduce poverty is to push poor folks out.
That's right.
They want to see an increase in average wage, an increase in average housing costs, and that is success to the people who judge whether our city is credit worthy. There's so much that we have to do to restructure how things are done, and I am so glad to be having this conversation with women who want to and a man who wants to.
I do.
Though he
All right,
says
Sam.
you
Yeah, we need to have a Cass Corridor episode because I could literally talk about
I
Cass
was
Corridor
like,
all
let's
day.
talk
I'm glad
about-
that you
No, I
still
swear
call
to
it
God.
that.
I do too. I still
Well,
haven't.
that area is Cass Corridor. See, but here's my deal: is Cass Corridor was like what the mayor on stage at the soundboard one year at the policy conference talking about. I dream of a Detroit in which the janitors live in the same building as the doctors at DMC, and
Yeah.
like literally
That's
that
what it
existed
was.
at
That
Madison.
was that.
It was.
Exactly.
And
I
George
was
Roberts
there
and Civic
in the
companies
90s.
Yeah.
Like
ended
I was
that.
there in the 90s. I saw
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
that
And I also saw the
Civic
implosion of it.
Companies
Yep.
is the company that George Roberts works for. He is a developer who used to call the police on Dre of Paramita Sound because he lived above there.
Yeah.
Moved his 1-year-old child above a
We had-
bar and record store. And so you can imagine the type of person that George is. I love you, George. I know you're
Yes.
listening to me because you're obsessed with me. And so
You know,
I feel bad for everybody that got pushed out and moved out. I know that there are active discussions with the neighbors about the parking because there's now is like a sticker or something. I don't know if it's made it to that side of Woodward, but on Brush Park there is.
There is.
Right.
That's a whole nother
But I
community.
see the signs,
Yeah.
and I see that on Park,
Yeah.
it's no longer a one-way. And I think that one way was in preparation for the parking sort of to be on one side of the street or the other.
That's correct.
And so they got rid of that, and now it's a two-way again. And so I'm just like, what is going on
we
here?
had to advocate to remove, they made Peterborough meter parking. And we know that there are residents, their cars are out there,
Yeah.
right? We had to advocate to get that out of
Yeah,
there.
that's crazy.
I'm going to say this. I said earlier that that racism was not a flaw; it's a feature. Gentrification is not a flaw; it's a feature.
That right
it's
there.
what we want to do. We can point out how it's unfair and how it squeezes people out, and we can act as though it's an accident. It is the intentionality of planners to come in and decide how do we design a downtown that looks prosperous. And you can't look prosperous when you have poor folks. I remember in Cass story, my sister used to work at Harbor Light on Cass. Mm-hmm. My mother went to Wayne State when I was a kid, and I remember how Wayne State used to look.
Yeah.
It's nothing like it looks right now. You have kids who go to Wayne who can't live on campus because the housing is so expensive. But I remember inexpensive housing being around there and what it was like. It's unfortunate, but I also know that Sue Mosley, she's no longer with Midtown Inc., but Sue Mosley was opposed to having developments for low-income people in downtown. And so you have nonprofits like hers that were established to be police poverty.
You know who didn't like Sue Mosley was Joel Landy, who hated the term Midtown.
Well,
and so,
I will say this in Sue Mosley's defense, this one thing.
Yes.
When we were doing the project, the permanent supportive housing, and doing that whole turnaround, she supported it. I couldn't figure out why, but she signed off on it.
Yeah.
And I needed her sign off.
And so I'm glad that she did that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she has done one or two other good things. But she
put
also,
the trash cans out there. I like those Midtown Inc. trash cans that are all around.
Listen, all I'm saying
trash.
is that Midtown Inc. exists for one reason, and that was to gentrify that whole area and call it Midtown. There was no Midtown.
They were
before
successful.
Sue Mosley. I remember there was a cultural center. Remember when there was the New Center? And they took New
That's
Center,
right.
but it's no longer functioning in the way that it was.
That's right.
New Center Association. What's the guy's? Oh my God! Over Northern Lights Lounge. Mike Salaka.
They just reopened.
Yes,
Yes, they
Mike
did.
Salaka was over.
That's right.
They just
New
reopened.
Center Community
You're going way back.
Association.
Yeah.
You know, when you
But it's
you get to
moving
a-
north. So you watch as
Yes.
it's moving down to the north end.
Yes,
right?
well, you know, I was over at Vanguard for 7 years. I was the first executive director there, and I remember when the Northern Area Association stopped at Woodward. I remember the North End was different, and you see it moving and changing.
that's
And I
right.
think there are those of us who have to be guardians for justice
that's right.
inside of neighborhoods, and so those people who are facilitating something else are doing the job they're paid to do. And I'm not trying to condemn them, but we just need to differentiate that from the work that people like my organization
And hold people accountable.
and hold people accountable.
That's right. Because at the end of the day, I'll say this, that all housing is affordable, right?
To somebody.
If you're a millionaire, it's only so much housing you can afford, right? And so this idea that the housing, that the new developments that are going up and saying we're going to set aside, because they call them now, set aside 10% for affordability. I always ask the question, you have to ask this, what is that number?
Affordability for
And normally it's at 80%. That is not for the population of folk that need housing in Detroit,
normally-
which is 30 and below.
And normally
right?
the 80% of the AMI is a studio.
That's right.
It's not a family size unit.
Correct.
You
Yep.
have
Yeah.
10 studios, and those are your affordable units at 80%. And you know that a certain kind of person is going to spend that much money. And it's either a recent college graduate
Right.
or a retiree who wants to live in the city. Your average family is just going to say, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Hats off to Mary Sheffield for 1,000 homes built in neighborhoods. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's an
right.
ambitious goal, but
Yep.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah. It's
We
gonna
are going
happen.
to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about who and what we are grateful for. Keep it locked. You are listening to Authentically Detroit.
Interested in renting space for corporate events, meetings, conferences, social events, or resource fairs? The Stoudemire Wellness Hub and Match Detroit Small Business Hub are available for rental by members, residents, businesses, and organizations. We offer rentals for activities such as corporate events, social events, meetings, conferences, art classes, fitness classes, and more. To learn more about our rentals and reserve space, visit ecn-detroit.org/space rental.
Welcome back. We want to thank you so much for listening to Authentically Detroit. If you have topics that you want discussed on our program, please do hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can visit our website, authentically-detroit.com. Now it is time where we give our weekly shout outs to the people. Veronika and Cheryl, we want to include you if you guys put you on the spot, but if you have any person or thing you want to shout out, let's start with you, Donna. Who do you want to shout out this week?
My oldest daughter, Camille, just got her master's in urban planning from U of M. We went to the celebration yesterday. She is a mother with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and she was a Dow Fellow and just doing so much. And really had she was hospitalized twice last year. So to see her thriving and to see her graduate with a 4.0 from U of M School.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Smart.
Congratulations.
I want to shout out my time in the Cass Corridor. There was a Tina Fey, Timothy Chalamet, and Kylie Jenner meme. I don't know if you guys have seen these meme formats, but some people listening will have. Tina Fey was Brush Park. Timothy Chalamet was Cass Corridor, and then what was the other one? Was Corktown or something? Was Kylie Jenner. My time in Cass Corridor was really fun. Like I got to meet Joel a couple times. Just odd. Leonard was a guy that was living there for a long, long time. Joel's old tax attorney, his name was Joe Kopitz, was sort of transitioning the portfolio. He sold the portfolio, and you remember the whole legal battle over. So he was at the heart of that legal battle. There was a trust that Gary Torgow was actually on.
That's about to bring Gary up. That's right.
And so Joe Kopitz, the sort of I don't want to say lowly tax attorney because I think he's got whatever he's got elsewhere in suburban Michigan. But he took on this trust of dignitaries and won in court and was able to sort of make away with, I think it was like $18 million was the sale of the portfolio. So it was not, there was it was small. It was not. You remember the Metro Times was like, it's going to be $1 billion.
Yeah.
It was less than $20 million was the entire portfolio was sold. And there's actually stories. I think the school up there got sold.
Yeah.
So shout out to Cass Corridor, all of the people that I met and loved. Kong Wen of Faux Lucky. Loved you guys. That was some of the best years of my life were spent on Charlotte, Park, and Peterborough, that block.
Well, I'm going to give 2 shout outs. One is to what I'm seeing already with our mayor. I love it. I'm going to hold you accountable, but I love what I'm seeing. The other is to our amazing, thriving families who are pushing through this, learning to advocate and elevate their voices, especially during this particular era. I'm really proud of them.
Mm-hmm. I have to say I agree. I'm grateful for my Detroit Cass Corridor time in my life because I wouldn't be who I am without it. And it's such a magical, special thing to talk about. But
it really is. Like we could have a whole episode talking about Cass Corridor.
We have to have a whole conversation about this. It's a whole other story. But really, my sister is about to finish her semester back at Wayne State. She struggled with COVID, so I'm really excited to see her back. I'm very, very proud that she's back at Wayne State.
Congratulations.
I know. She's finishing her finals right now. And then also to my team at Empowerment Plan. Like, it is a hard time out there. It is. You're seeing so much and stuff, and that you've never you're seeing it all at once, all at the same time, and the needs are so high and the needs are so extreme. And the fact that they're doing it every day and they're facing it day in and day out and they get love and joy from it and they feel energized by it is incredible. So just shout out to them too.
Good for you.
Veronika Scott of COTS Detroit.
No.
Right. You see
You paused. It was good.
I know, because I'm like, why am I just can't read today. Sorry, guys.
We gonna work on those glasses.
The glasses are nice.
I just
but they
agreed
just need to work.
to do the audio for her book, so I'm like actively like.
You need to get those glasses.
I'm good.
checked.
I spent 3 years of radio readouts, so like I'm good at this, y'all.
She's so nervous now.
Do it again. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Because this is just the end bit, so it doesn't matter. I say as he stresses. We're good. We want to thank Veronika Scott of Empowerment Plan and Cheryl P. Johnson of COTS Detroit. We want to thank you for listening in. We will talk to you guys, see and hear from you next week, but I expect to hear from some of you guys throughout my neighborhood and downtown. I want to say, too, everybody that I saw this weekend at the Workers' Day on Friday at the train station, everybody that I saw at the Mallory McMurrow and the Abdul El-Sayed events that come up and say hello to me, thank you so much for supporting Black journalism. Thank you so much for supporting Detroit 1 Million and my work at Michigan Chronicle. And thank you for supporting Authentically Detroit, a platform for real people, real voices. We'll talk to you guys next week.